This week's episode of the Salt and Sauce Chat Show is sponsored by North Broad Street Records, bringing you the very best in unissued music. North Broad Street Records discovers and brings to vinyl cool, unfinished gems. For more information, please visit www.northbroadst.co.uk. Coming up on this week's Salt and Sauce Chat Show.
I probably get more of a buzz just hearing something for the first time and being excited about it. It's nice when they get somewhere, but if they don't get somewhere, it doesn't mean they've failed. It just means I've got better taste than everyone else.
Exactly, yeah.
My biggest regret is I was hosting the Bathgate Music Festival in sort of the square in Bathgate the previous year, I think it was, and someone had said, oh, you want to go along the road to this wee venue stroke music shop, which has got some live music happening as well. You want to go, there's a lad called Lewis Capaldi, you want to go and see him. And I didn't go, and I'm gutted now because there probably would have been like 20 or 30 people. Tea in the Park, just, you know, by the time you walked over to see the band that you wanted to see, having missed half a set from another band, you'd see half a set of them. It's good for getting a taster of bands, but then you probably it makes you think, all right, I want to go and see them actually playing a proper concert.
Thanks for watching the Salt and Sauce Chat Show. As you'll be able to tell, that due to the ongoing pandemic, we've been unable to welcome any guests into the studio at this time, therefore opening a brand new door to carry out some remote interviews like this one that you're watching right now. One potential guest that we did approach was the one and only Katie Price. Now, Katie is quite keen to come on the show, but unfortunately we need to be at a later date. Katie's schedule's quite busy at the moment, spending time with her son Harvey, who is at a crucial point in his life where he's trying to find a suitable residential college for him to go in as he turns 18 years old this year. This was clear to see in the recently aired BBC documentary Katie Price, Harvey and Me. Katie kindly provided us with some footage of that documentary, which can still be viewed on the BBC iPlayer. We wish Katie and Harvey all the very best in the coming weeks, and we look forward to welcoming Katie Price on the Salt and Sauce Chat Show at a later date.
So what does Zach do now? He's 19. And what Harvey be doing when he's 19?
He's going to the college.
Yeah, and we're going to see if he likes it.
Oh, yeah?
And we're going to see some trains as well as talking to Zach. Make Harvey very happy boy.
Oh, yes. It'll make me feel happy, man.
Oh, look, there's another train coming in.
Oh, my God!
I think that's to Guildford.
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 That's it, Zach. Thank you.
No problem. I've missed you, Harvey.
It's very rare to find a college near home. You do have to go out far. And like she said, though you want your son to be in your family unit, you also have to think what's best for them. So maybe that is the case. He does go further afield, which I still can't get my head around yet.
You know your son best. Yeah. You know him best of all, and you know what's right for him.
It was shocking to know that human being sitting next to me has experienced that, and something that maybe I could experience with Harvey, just because of the way the system works.
Welcome along to another episode of the Salt and Sauce Chat Show. I'm David Simmonds, and on tonight's show I'm absolutely buzzing to be joined with a radio legend. We've got none other than Jim Gellatly on the show tonight. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me, and thank you for pronouncing my name right. Hey, it's always a good start.
It's funny you say that because I've got a colleague here at a State of Mind who's, I think, a friend or something was called Gellatly, but it was pronounced different. It was Gellatly. How have you had it mispronounced? Sorry, Jim.
Gellatly?
Yes, there's a few bits. Jim Gellatly.
Gellatly.
Gellatly, that was the one. Yeah. No, I got it right. It's all those years of listening to it on the radio, because it's been almost, 30 years now you've been gracing us on the airwaves. You started away up at Murray Firth FM up in Inverness. If I take you back all those years, do you remember the first time you ever went on air?
Yeah, I do. I filled in on the Sunday night rock show. Definition of rock was just stuff with guitars at the time. The guy that presented it, Dave, he was a big Springsteen fan. So I don't think I played any Springsteen. And suddenly I started playing all this like indie and alternative stuff on that show. And I remember recording it on a big reel-to-reel tape and taking it to the boss, and he took weeks to finally listen to it, and then finally gave me some feedback, which you sound like a poof on acid, and I'll always remember that. And when I got an award a few years ago, I think I mentioned that in my acceptance speech. And actually, another guy who had been at Murray Firth with me, who I think was at North Sound with me as well, Neil. He had Brian's phone number and gave him a call. So I spoke to him that night and just said thank you very much for giving me that wee break. So Murray Firth Radio was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you were, like you said, on the airwaves at Murray Firth. You mentioned North Sound as well. You've been at likes of Beat 106, Radio Scotland, the In-Demand Bauer Radio Network as well. What made you first want to pursue the career in radio?
I think my ideal job would be as a pop star, but I can't play any instruments and I certainly can't sing. I've dabbled in the past with bands that never did anything, but I can't really hold a tune. So I love my music, and I love my local music, and I love my emerging acts and new bands coming through, new singers. So I think if I wasn't on the radio, I'd be telling people about the music I loved. Because there was nothing better than, going to a house party or whatever and sticking on records and chatting about music. And I love that whole concept. So, I mean, it was the music rather than the radio that drew me towards it. And where better to spread the word and the love about the music that you want to promote than being on the radio and being able to do it. I mean, it's changed dramatically, the different ways now that there are doing the same thing. But radio was the way through for me.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's all about new music with you, Jim. You were credited as the first radio DJ to play the likes of Katie Tunstall, there was Las Vegas, Biffy Clyro, Fratellis, Twin Atlantic, The Enemy. You've got Sargent in there as well, and obviously your hometown band in Dundee, The View. That's a few big Scottish acts in that lineup, mate, isn't there?
Yeah, I don't think I take the credit for The View. I think I probably first heard Zane Lowe on Radio 1 talking about The View, but I'll take the credit.
Quite right, mate. One of the acts that I named was Sargent. We actually had Nick Mercer on the show well before Christmas now. What do you remember about his band, Sargent? I mean, they kind of broke through around about the same time as The View, didn't they?
Yeah, I remember because David, the A&R man, I was quite friendly with him. And I think I was possibly playing some demos from them, or certainly when they released their first single, so they passed it on to me. Maybe I'd supported them a bit in the past. So I remember that, and the pivotal moment for me, I think, was seeing them at the SECC supporting Oasis, which was just incredible. This little band from Fife suddenly playing with the biggest band in the country at the time at one of the biggest indoor venues, certainly the biggest indoor venue in Scotland, pre-Hydro days. And it was just, to see a little band like that make that jump. Sadly, they never became the household names that they should have been, but they're a fabulous band, and good to see that they occasionally pop back for reunions, and obviously Nick doing his stuff and some of the others still doing music as well, and that's good.
Yeah, I mean, is that part of the buzz of discovering new music when you see them go from that like demo tape or that first song they release, and then you see them, like you say, at the SECC or hitting the charts? Is that part of the buzz with the whole new music that you deal with?
It is, yeah. But I probably get more of a buzz just hearing something for the first time and being excited about it. It's nice when they get somewhere, but if they don't get somewhere, it doesn't mean they failed. It just means I've got better taste than everyone else.
Exactly, yeah. Do you remember, is there any examples that come to you when you first heard a song, you were like, wow, that's unbelievable? Obviously, there's probably been loads, but is there one that maybe you just think that's different class?
I think the first time I heard the Fratelli's Chelsea Dagger at the Barfly in Glasgow, that was like, oh, this sounds like a bit of an anthem. I never knew how many legs it would grow, and it would become like a goal-scoring anthem. I know Celtic used it, but Dundee would play it for a while as well, the hook as well, and that's pretty cool. Even when things pop up in TV adverts or in films, it's quite exciting. It's like, oh, what's that again? And then you get the old Shazam app, which is the best thing ever. I said, all right. I mean, I can't watch a film now without pausing it and rewinding it and just Shazamming the music in it. I could just wait till the end credits, but I'm impatient.
I mean, I seen on my research this interview when I knew I was interviewing you, Jim. It says that you played a key role in uncovering some of the most important bands around, including Oasis, Snow Patrol, and Coldplay. Would that be a fair statement, or is that maybe me trying to pump up your ego a bit? Or
it's poetic license or Wikipedia license, I think. The fact is, I was doing a program playing new bands, and these were new bands that record companies were pushing at the time, and I happened to play them. So I'm sure everybody else in my position who was allowed, because as you know, many radio stations you don't get to choose what you play. But I was lucky enough to do sort of so-called specialist shows where I picked all the music. So they were obvious bands to play, and they were also getting coverage in the music press as well.
Yeah, I mean, in 2017, you gave a list of ones to watch in 2008, and top of that list, before he was a household name, I should say, was Mr. Lewis Capaldi. Did you expect him to go on and have the global success that he's now had back then?
Oh, certainly not. Certainly not. My biggest regret is I was hosting the Bathgate Music Festival in sort of the square in Bathgate the previous year, I think it was. And someone had said, oh, you want to go along the road to this wee venue / music shop, which has got some live music happening as well. You want to go, there's a lad called Lewis Capaldi. You want to go and see him. And I didn't go. And I'm gutted now because there probably would have been like 20 or 30 people. I think the place only holds about 20 or 30. The Midnight Breakfast Club, I think it is, in Bathgate. I didn't go, but I did have a encounter with Lewis a few years before when he was in a sort of indie band, and they'd been doing a gig, I think at Studio 24 in Edinburgh, and I had gone through to see Nina Nesbitt at the Liquid Room, and on the train home, there were a bunch of lads who introduced themselves. And I said, oh, send us some music. And I think I featured a track from the band on my podcast at the time. So I think I bumped into Lewis's dad at the first Transmit Festival that he played at. And he mentioned that I played his old band on the radio. So I think I was the first person ever to play Lewis on the radio, possibly.
Well, that's a good accolade to have, mate, definitely.
Although Radio Grapevine, the hospital station in West Lothian, probably, I think Ross probably has the actual credit for playing Lewis Capaldi first.
There you go. It's a good credit to have, I suppose. I mean, I remember, obviously, the show you did on XFM Scotland. You were there until its closure. How has that been part of that station? Because it's still going strong down in London, isn't it? But it's no longer available up here in Scotland, is it?
Well, it is. It's on DAB, digital radio up here, and it's now Radio X. So, yes. XFM sort of shut down and rebranded. So I was with XFM till the end, but I was with XFM twice because when it first came to Scotland as XFM Scotland, taking over what had been Galaxy, and prior to that had been Beat 106, the same frequency and everything. I sort of just stayed on. I wasn't there for Galaxy, but they invited me back for XFM. Although the second time round, XFM was a different XFM from the first time round, different owners and the likes. It gets very complicated, I tell you, David. It does. But no, I was there for the start of the original XFM Scotland, and when they brought XFM back to Scotland, albeit a scaled down version, taking over from what was Rock Radio, I was invited to come along, and I was at Bauer at the time doing a network show, the In Demand Uncut show. So I left that as one of those times where I wasn't sacked. I actually left to go to something else, which sadly only lasted a few months.
Yeah, because the Bauer show, that was all around the whole of Scotland, wasn't it? That was, like you say, from Radio Borders all the way up to MFR in the north. How was that covering such a vast...
everywhere except MFR.
Oh, was it? Was it not up there? Oh,
yeah,
I thought it was...
Yeah. So
how naive of me.
A lovely girl called Marion, she managed to stay afloat and keep her show on a Sunday night.
So it went all the way up to North Sound in Aberdeen then? Well,
yeah.
How was that, though, covering the whole of Scotland? I mean, you had listeners, like I say, from all the way down Radio Borders all the way up to Aberdeen. How was that, knowing that you were covering such a big range on a big station?
Well, I tried to keep it as local as possible. I mean, there's a thing called split links that you can do. So you have something separate going out on all the stations. So if you were listening on TFM, when I did a link, I would say on TFM.
That's kind of the way that obviously the radio industry's unfortunately went down now. Obviously, like say, it's so much networked, it's all coming out of one hub. It's a shame to see the radio industry go that way. It's a bit cutthroat just now, isn't it? The jobs are quite limited. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did try my hardest to make each one have some locality. So I was conscious that I would try and play bands from the Borders, bands from Aberdeen, and make it sound semi-local from that point of view. And I'd do a gig guide, which is easy for Glasgow and Edinburgh, but not so easy for Dumfries, for example. Trying to find gigs in Kilmarnock and in Dumfries, and not so bad Dundee and Aberdeen, but not as many gigs as there are certainly in Glasgow. So you'd fill it up with other ones in other cities, because the fact is, folk from Dundee will travel to Glasgow for a big gig anyway.
Yeah. You're now on the airwaves at BFBS in Scotland, which is the British Forces Broadcast Service. How does that station sort of differ from the other sort of commercial ones that you've worked on?
Well, it's very different from a musical point of view, and it's a learning process because you're broadcasting to the armed forces community. So you have that in mind. I'm not there as a music presenter as such. So I'm playing stuff that's on the playlist. So there's a lot of pop and stuff that I wouldn't, if I was doing a show that I was in total control of, it would be a different playlist. But I do enjoy that, and it's a different discipline. But I mean, I still have my foot in the door with the new music, because I do a weekly show on a station called Amazing Radio, which is online.
Yeah, that's my next question. I was going to, what is it?
Gateshead, so I can continue to fulfill my passion for new music there, and be a broadcaster on BFBS. And
Yep,
it's
so
a
an
breakfast show as well, so it's like totally different from other shows. I mean,
yes.
I had never ever. A lot of people get into radio and their ambition is to do a breakfast show. That was never really my ambition, because I wanted to play new music, and you can't get away with that on a breakfast show.
So do you have full control of the playlist on Amazing Radio? Is that the music solely picked by yourself? Absolutely.
It has to be uploaded to the Amazing Radio website to be considered, but and that's a fantastic source of new and emerging music coming through. So it's limited. That, I mean, it was when I first joined 10 years ago, it was tricky, because you couldn't play anything that was registered with PRS, because they didn't have a deal with PRS at the time. But now you can. So there's major label stuff, and it's not just independent releases that gets through. But I mean, it's not like I'll play something that's big and is in the charts. I'll play, if it's on a major label, it'll be an emerging act coming through. So once they get to a certain level, I'll probably move on and not play them anymore, because especially if they're getting played everywhere else, because it's about discovery and finding, hopefully sharing music, and hopefully some of those acts will become somebody's next new favorite band. There's no, you asked me earlier, it's exciting seeing bands get on. I tell you what's really exciting, when someone gets in touch and says, or I meet somebody at a gig when we're allowed to go to gigs, and they say, "Oh, I remember the first time you played blah, blah, blah. I'm a huge fan now. Thank you for introducing them to me." And that for me is the best thing ever.
Yeah, I mean, how much damage is the current pandemic having on the live music scene? You mentioned obviously that we can't obviously do that at the moment, which makes sense. But
Well,
artists.
how much damage is it having on the live music scene? There isn't a live music scene.
That's it, yeah.
It's catastrophic. But then, people have gone online and done the online gigs and things, but it's not the same as actually. I was trying to work out when I last went to a gig. Obviously, it was pre-lockdown. So the last gig I went to was Malka at Stereo in Glasgow last year. It should have been the Snuts at King Tut's, but my wife didn't want to come out that night, and I didn't want to go on my own. Absolutely gutted. She can take the blame for that.
Her fault. Is it the case now that obviously with all this downtime we're in lockdown, is it a case now you think that a lot of artists are maybe devoting a lot of time to writing new material, and maybe when this all blows over we could maybe see a boom in new music?
Oh, absolutely. I think we are already. I mean, it's incredible. There are probably more new releases coming out at the moment because people can't gig, especially the up-and-coming bands. They're just recording stuff. And with technology as it is at the moment, there are the facilities. I mean, it's so easy. People have recorded albums on their iPhones, so it's so easy now. Get with GarageBand, and even you don't even need a decent mic nowadays. There's been some incredible music coming through. So there's sometimes maybe the quality isn't there, and I'll say to somebody, that's really good and really encouraging. That's going to be immense when you can actually get into a recording studio and do it properly. But the seeds have been planted to make something special. But no, there seems to be the uploads to Amazing Radio at the moment seem to have increased dramatically because people are doing lockdown recordings all the time, sticking things online, sharing, and that's one of the positives of lockdown is the fact that it's been quite a creative time for creatives.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously about how you can nowadays record an album on your phone. Looking at the whole technology side of things, and especially social media, the likes of YouTube and TikTok. I mean, like you say, you've been in this almost 30 years now, doing this with new acts and new music.
Don't get me started on TikTok. Goodness. I just
Are you not a fan?
Jealous. No, I just get jealous when I see all these people doing these incredible TikTok videos. I've done one, and it's not particularly good. It's me trying to throw a hoop at the basketball along the road in the wee park, and it's not very good at all. But I see some of them, and I just go, oh, wow, it's so creative and so fun. The problem with TikTok is you could sit and just watch it for hours, just watching these incredibly creative people, mostly youngsters, on TikTok. And even Dame Judi Dench is on TikTok with, I think, her grandson, and it's hilarious. But TikTok's a funny one because it is. The music that's used, it is just short clips, but those short clips have actually generated bona fide hit singles from the likes of The Weeknd and countless more. I think if you looked at the top 10 now, most of those songs have started out virally on TikTok. It's bonkers. And then don't get me started on sea shanties. Goodness me.
Exactly. That's kind of what I was talking about. I mean, this time, 2 years ago, you would never hear anything like that in the charts. It's just crazy how that's. As a young postman from Scotland, if anybody doesn't know, that's went on TikTok. He's went viral with a sea shanty, like you say, style song, and it's now the UK's #1 single at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, did it warrant? Did a TikTok video warrant a record deal? I don't know.
Well, it worked out for him.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely, and all success to him. I mean, B. Charlotte did a TikTok, a Dundee version of the song, which is fantastic. I sent it to my sister, and she says, "Oh, it's not very long." I said, "Oh, no, because it's like a TikTok video." And the original Wellerman wasn't particularly long either. So, yeah, it's just, it's bonkers. It's bonkers. I think I'm too old for TikTok.
Me too, mate. Me too. I want to touch on some venues. Obviously, we discussed. Obviously, you can't obviously go anywhere because of the whole pandemic that we're going through at the moment. But I mean, what was your favourite venue? I think you mentioned King Tut's. Where was it? Like, if you wanted to see new music, where would you look to? I think there's one in Dunfermline. Is it JP McCoy's as well? Is it Malloy's?
PJ McCoy. PJ Malloy's.
Yeah. What's your memories? What's your favourite sort of venues that you like to go and see new music in?
I used to love going to Fat Sam's in Dundee when I was sort of starting to discover music. They had a Sunday night called the Dance Factory, which was run by Stuart Clumpus, who went up on to set up Dance Factory Promotions, who became DF Concerts. So my musical live music education was pretty much a Sunday night at Fat Sam's, which had sort of alternative music from the decks, and then these live bands performing. So the likes of Zodiac Mind Warp, the Primitives, the Proclaimers, Billy Bragg, Andy White, Micro Disney, many bands people have forgotten about now, but that I became a huge fan of, and it was just amazing. The Shop Assistants, goodness, the list just goes on. It's just every single Sunday night, it was like a religion, going there, dressed up in my goth gear, digging all these bands.
Yeah. What about the likes of Tea in the Park now? How huge a miss is something like that? Obviously, it couldn't be on this year or any previous years. It's not going to happen anymore. I think we've got Transmit in Glasgow. But how big a miss is Tea in the Park to Scotland?
Tea in the Park for me just got too big. I was at every single Tea in the Park. When Transmit came along as sort of replacement, not that they would admit that, and Tea in the Park, I think, has gone now. When Transmit came along, there were so many advantages. It was a bit smaller, and for somebody who would want to go and visit all the stages and know that there would be various artist clashes, Transmit's a lot more manageable because it's a smaller area and only like 3 stages, so you could go and you could work it out and plot it. Whereas Tea in the Park, you'd end up missing many bands. Like the same with Glastonbury, you'd miss everybody. I mean, you could go to Glastonbury and not see any live music because there's so much else going on. But Tea in the Park, just, you know, by the time you walked over to see the band that you wanted to see, having missed half a set from another band, you'd see half a set of them. It's good for getting a taster of bands, but then you probably it makes you think, all right, I want to go and see them actually playing a proper concert, because you'd missed so much. I mean, headliners, I'm never really particularly interested in headliners because I want to see the smaller bands. It's nice to see the headliners, especially if you'd seen them lower down the bill. But I mean, people would always moan about Tea in the Park and, oh, the headliners aren't very good. And I'm like, hey, but it's more about the other bands. It's the whole thing. It's not just about the headliners. And some people go to these festivals only to see headliners. Don't see the point in that at all. So much going on.
Out of all the years that you went to Tea in the Park, is there any performance that stands out to you that you remember?
Oh, it's a difficult one. I remember seeing Imagine Dragons for the first time that they played Tea in the Park. And that was brilliant because they did a cover of Proclaimers 500 Miles, which was quite cool. And I'd seen them, I think, a year before at Nice and Sleazy in Glasgow, their first Scottish gig. In fact, when they came to play Tea in the Park, I'd been to every single Imagine Dragons gig that they played in Scotland at that point. So that was the first time would have been at Nice and Sleazy, then possibly the ABC, and then the Academy, and then Tea in the Park. So I'd watched them really in a matter of months up. And I think the first 2 or maybe the first 3 gigs were all on November the 15th. So it was like a year apart, and just like boom, 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 boom. And that was like really exciting. And who else? Gosh, there's so many memorable moments. Seeing like massive acts like REM and the likes playing there, and being in the position I'm in where I was doing radio shows, getting to interview Michael Stipe. That was pretty cool. I was
just going to...
They interviewed him about 3 times, and that's really exciting. And having the access to go into the artist area as well, see Lady Gaga in her pants
Did you ever like have a couple of beers with any of the acts or anything like that? Obviously, you got quite up and close with them, like you say, working, like interviewing them. Did you ever sit and have a beer with Noel Gallagher or that? No.
Nah, I didn't really hang out with them. You're shunted around and escorted everywhere in those areas and wait outside I mean, there was one with the Ting Tings,
Yeah,
where the interview was scheduled, and I think I had to wait with my daughter for about 2 hours to do the interview, and then they decided they didn't want to do any more interviews, having just done Gaelic Telly, and then they ditched me, and it was like, oh great. They were so apologetic the next time I interviewed them, because I made it known in advance with the Gary from the record company that I wasn't happy the last time. And I should really be putting them on my blacklist. But they were fine. And you know, they were tired because they had a hectic schedule.
yeah. Have you ever come across any other sort of divas that have maybe not been so kind to you?
Not really. And the only instances would be, I would say it was my fault. So I think Fish told me to F off at Fife Aid back in 1980, whatever that was. The Fife Aid was David Bellamy, the environmentalist, was like one of the figureheads of Fife Aid. And it was this great festival, hideous weather, didn't sell many tickets. It was the final performance that Fish did with Marillion. So that would perhaps explain why he didn't want to do any interviews. Who else played? Captain Sensible was there. I think his solution to the environmental problem was chucking all the cars in the effing river. He was hilarious. The Sugar Cubes played that as well with Björk. That was really cool. That was probably the first time I'd been working at a festival doing interviews, and I was asked, "Do you want to interview Jack Bruce?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm thinking to myself, "Who's Jack Bruce?" I didn't know who Jack Bruce was, and then so I had to ask him, and he's like, "Well, I used to be in a band called Cream with a guy called Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker, and we sold millions of records." And I thought, stupid. I tell you, I know. I mean, he's sadly no longer with us, but I know who Jack Bruce is now.
Yeah, that's it. In April 2018, you won a Radio Academy Award. You touched on this earlier as well. It was a John Peel Award for outstanding contribution to music radio. That must have been a huge honour to receive that, Jim.
Yeah, that was lovely. I think that was just marking that I'd been around for a long time and not won anything, so they felt that they'd have to give me something. But what was cool was looking at the list of people that had previously won that, including John Peel himself. It was renamed after his sad death. I think I was the only person on that list that I hadn't heard of.
You put yourself down, mate. Build yourself up. You deserved it.
Well, I mean, it was an incredible honour, and I think they had to tell me I was getting it in advance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken the night off my show to go down to London. So it was lovely. Myself and my wife got a wee trip to London for that.
Nice one. Let's talk about some of the up and coming artists that you're maybe champion. There's actually been two that we've had in here. On your one to watch is Josh Grant. Sorry, we've had Josh in here doing acoustic sessions in A State of Mind. Is Josh one to watch?
Well, I suppose so. He's it's a funny one because he's forever ribbing me about football. Because
he's a Dundee United fan, isn't he? And you're a Dundee fan, is that right?
Aye, absolutely. He's from Edinburgh. What is he a Dundee United fan for? Goodness me. Says he that lives in Glasgow, but I'm a born and bred Dundonian. No, Josh is a fine talent, and his song Edinburgh is just wonderful. He does have a song about Dundee United, which I think is a cover version. I think it might be a cover version, or certainly reworded. But it's fantastic, and that's coming from a Dundee fan. That I think this is quite good. Although the best football song ever is by Leo Sayer.
What one?
Which is Hamish the Goalie. Now, I urge you to dig this out. It's on SoundCloud. It's Leo Sayer doing a cover of the Michael Mara song Hamish the Goalie, which Michael Mara did for Hamish McAlpine's testimonial.
Right.
And it's got these lines about Princess Grace looking down from the stand and stuff when they played Monaco. It's absolutely beautiful. It was a beautiful song anyway, but Leo Sayer doing it, it's just totally surreal. Well worth checking out.
Yeah, no, I certainly will. Another up and coming act, if you like, that we've had in here at A State of Mind is Dancing on Tables.
Oh yes, they're great.
Yes, they were really nice guys. Yeah, I know they were superb, and are we expecting maybe big things from these two guys, like you say, Dancing on Tables and Josh Grant, hopefully once this whole pandemic passes?
Hopefully. I mean, all the potential's there, but even if nothing huge comes out of it, they've thoroughly entertained me, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed watching their music and listening to some of it back as well, just obviously in preparation to interview them. But no, I'm hoping that they do well. Like I said before, Nick Mercer on here as well, who's the lead singer of Sargent. There's a girl in Edinburgh that's getting a lot of raving reviews, and I think you've touted her as well, called Bo Anderson.
Ah, yeah. She's great. So she was on my 10 for 21 list, I think. She's fantastic. I mean, I love my pop music, and there's a lot of brilliant female singer-songwriters doing sort of edgy pop, and Bo Anderson is one of them. I think she's fantastic.
I mean, she's been compared to be what Edinburgh's answer to Rihanna. She had a lot of praise from Sir Elton John and Scott Mills on Radio 1 as well. So is she the real deal? I've not really listened to much of her stuff, to be honest, but I know of her.
Yeah, her EP, she just released her debut EP, and it's fantastic, a great collection of songs, and it's feisty as well. So it's not sugary pop, and there's lyrics in there that make you think about them. So there's lots of La La Love You type songs out there that people do, but there's some thought gone into the lyrical content, and that's nice. I mean, I'm not a huge one for lyrics anyway. I like a melody, but no, Bo Anderson's pretty special.
Is there anybody else that we should be aware of to look out for in 2021?
There's a couple of acts that were on previous lists of mine that are starting to break through now. So there's a band from Glasgow called Heights, who worked early on with Gary Clark from Danny Wilson in Dundee, and they make this wonderful electro pop. Their new single "Bad Tattoo" is just fabulous. And then there's a band, sort of a boy-girl band, that have, I don't know, they're the sort of band that are somewhere between, I don't know, the Jesus and Mary Chain and sort of Phil Spector type girl bands of the 60s. But I mean, it's a very indie thing. They're called Spires, and I think they're fabulous, and they're going to be massive. I think they should be anyway.
Definitely keep an eye out for them. You mentioned earlier you're a Dundee fan. You've got quite a big connection to the club. Your late father Ian was chairman of Dundee and the president of the Scottish Football League. Your grandfather was chairman of the club when they won the Scottish League Championship in 1961 and 62. I take it was just inherited from them, the club.
I wish they had won it in 1961 and 1962, because that would have mean they'd won it twice. So sadly, it was just the one season. Season
61-62, sorry.
Yeah. But I liked how you said it, because it makes it, if anyone listening didn't know, they think we won it twice.
Yeah, but they won it in that season, we'll go with.
In 2 years' time as well, of course. So when people listen back to and watch this back, they'll say, oh gosh, yes, Jim was right there. They won it that season.
So I take it the love of the club was just well I'm a Hearts fan, so you're up against some stiff competition this season, I'm afraid, Jim.
Well, it's still to fall apart for Hearts.
Touch wood, it doesn't. Touch wood. Well, you've just signed the likes of Jason Cummins and Charlie Adam. I mean, the club are surely putting out a statement now that they want to get back to the Premiership, if you like.
Yeah, but then beaten by Wraith Rovers. So it's just like Dundee have for a number of years been totally inconsistent, and I'm just hoping it does come good. Hearts maybe too far ahead now, but we'll need to wait and see. But I think probably a playoff place is the best we can hope for. But that's going to be tough. But you know what? Do I really want to be playing in the Premiership? I don't know. It's not as much fun. I think possibly if you ask, I was going to say if you ask a Rangers supporter, their best years were going to the little grounds when they were right at the bottom again, but probably not. For a Dundee fan, when you don't expect to win things, if you're in a lower league, you have more opportunity to win things rather than just being cannon fodder when you get promoted.
Yeah. Like we touched on earlier, Jim, you're on BFBS Radio on The Breakfast Show. That can be heard across Edinburgh and surrounding areas on 98.5 FM. Is that correct?
Yep. Oh, I think so. And we're also on DAB in Glasgow and FM in Edinburgh as well.
Superb. So check out...
you said Edinburgh. In Inverness, that's the one.
Fort George. Yeah, what about Fort George? Perfect. And like you say, your amazing radio is on DAB and online as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure having him on the show this week. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jim Gellatly.
Hey.